Conservative political consultant Matt Mackowiak. Thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
My pleasure. Good to be with you again.
So let's talk. How bruising of a campaign is this going to be between the Attorney General and Senator Cornyn?
Yeah, look, I expect this to be the most expensive statewide Republican primary race in Texas history. I expect this to be one of the nastiest races in Texas political history, perhaps the nastiest in several decades. These people don't like each other. These two candidates don't like each other. They have very different approaches, very different styles. I would argue there's some ideological differences, although I'm not sure they're quite as wide as some people think. And there's a lot at stake. I mean, these individual U.S. Senate seats have real value, and I can tell you one of the things I think that bothers Senator Cornyn and his team is that they believe that Ken Paxton would put the U.S. Senate seat at risk, meaning that Colin Allred or another credible Democrat could perhaps make the race very competitive if Ken Paxton were the nominee. Particularly if the midterms, next year were highly competitive with Democrats at the wind with having the wind at their back. But fundamentally, look, John Cornyn has never lost an election. He's, I think, 19-0. I suspect that actually means 38-0 because he's had both primaries and generals. He runs highly professional, highly sophisticated, highly capable, highly skilled campaigns. And he's always done that. And he's always been one of the best fundraisers in Texas history. Ken Paxton is a survivor. For his strengths and weaknesses, he has clearly found a way to survive very significant political and even legal threats to him in recent years. We just haven't had political heavyweights go against each other at this level in recent years in Texas. The Dewhurst-Cruz race might be the last example of that. But really, when Cruz was running, he was really not well known. He was Solicitor General. Not many people knew who he was. This is different. Both these statewide candidates, statewide elected officials, are well known across the state. They're both going to raise, 10, maybe $20 million each. They're going to spend an enormous amount of money on negative ads, and we'll see what the Republican primary electorate decides.
And do you think that the fact that the AG has announced this early, I mean, Cornyn announced early, obviously, in March, but here we are early April. Does this reflect the fact that he thinks he's got to start early to raise the money that he needs?
Precisely. This is a March 2026 race. You could perhaps have it go to a May runoff and primary runoff. So we'll have to see how many candidates get in and how these candidates perform. But yes, one of the big question marks for me is can Ken Paxton raise the money he needs? He's not always been a very strong fundraiser relative to other statewides. And Ken Paxton and John Cornyn, conversely, has been one of the strongest fundraisers in recent political history in Texas. Remember, Ken Paxton's running in a federal race for the first time. He's only ever run for a state race before where you have no limits. At the federal level, you have $3,500 per limit per person per cycle. So he could raise $3,500 for the primary, and then for the general, if you had a primary runoff, you would have a third cycle. But nonetheless, if you're trying to raise $10 or $20 million for the primary, you better have thousands of people who can max out. And I don't know that Ken Paxton has that. We're going to find out fairly quickly. I think John Cornyn is going to raise an enormous amount of money, and this is going to be a hotly contested race with national implications and national attention. You're going to see significant conservative influencers weigh in. You're going to see Republican Senate incumbents weigh in. And the question for me is, did Donald Trump weigh in? And if so, for whom and when? I do think his endorsement would be fairly close to decisive if it were to come. It's the strongest endorsement in history of the Republican Party. But I also think he's under no pressure to make a decision soon. He will likely want to see the filing period come and go, which won't finish till the second week of December. He'll want to see how fundraising goes. He'll want to look at polling. He'll want to see these candidates, compete. And I suspect he'll make a decision next year, early next year would be my expectation. But we'll see. I assure you, both candidates would very much like to have President Trump's strong endorsement in this race.
Do you think that whoever President Trump endorses, that will be the deciding factor? They'll win the primary?
I don't think it's a guarantee, but I think it makes it much more likely. And that is, look, the Republican base trusts President Trump. That's the most powerful endorsement we have in our party right now. Do I think someone could overcome it? It's possible. I could actually see both candidates potentially overcoming that endorsement. But in the end, I generally believe that candidate quality matters and the quality of a campaign matters. How much do you raise? How efficiently do you spend it? What is your strategy? What is your message? And how do you deliver your message? These things generally matter a lot more than endorsements. People think endorsements decide races. President Trump's endorsement is very significant, trust me, but it is not the only factor. Your ability to run a statewide campaign and put a statewide organization together, your ability to add a ground game at scale is important. Your ability to run compelling, memorable, effective paid television is important. The efficiency of your spend, the efficiency of your fundraise, all these things, come together. And in a state that's as expensive and large as Texas, running a highly efficient, highly effective campaign can make the difference. So we've seen Cornyn do that. Paxton, I would say, did that in the last primary when he ran for Attorney General. He was challenged by 3 significant figures. But look, Ken Paxton's never run against anyone as strong as John Cornyn, and John Cornyn's never been challenged by anyone as strong as Ken Paxton. And only one of them can win. So it's going to be an absolutely fascinating 10 or 12 or 14-month period, depending on if there's a primary runoff or not.
Matt Mackowiak, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.